What an honor to have Judy Collins and Ari Hest here at Build Series. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
And congratulations on your beautiful new album.
Thank you.
Silver
Hearing those
Sky
songs
Blue.
and thinking, oh, we have to sing that one. Oh, we
Yeah.
have to sing that one.
Well, they're all so good.
We haven't gotten around to singing all of them in a live setting yet, but we're almost there.
Well, you have a residency coming up at the Café Carlyle.
Yes, we do.
And you've got several dates, so that should give you enough time to get them all in there one way or
We'll do
another.
it. Thank you.
I'm very curious as to how you found each other. Can we start there?
I found Judy in 2012. Well, obviously I knew Judy,
She'd been around a while
but I
at that
didn't
point.
really know Judy.
Uh-huh.
And in 2012, I actually played a festival over on the East Side in the winter of 2012, and I was an opening act on a bill that she was the headliner. So that was the first time that we actually met in person, and we saw each other's show that night. I cried, and then she asked me if I'd like to open a show, and that was the beginning of this.
And then we went to Alaska.
Wow.
Almost.
You went for
Not
just
right
from
away.
the
There
east
was a
side of
little bit-
Manhattan up
Right to Alaska. That was our first big tour, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was, but there were a couple of shows sprinkled in before we went 3,000 miles away.
Then I started listening to his shows and loved what I was hearing and began to explore his discography. He has 8 wonderful albums with wonderful songs on them. And I thought, well, I like this one or that one. So I started singing a song called Fireplace from his last album, the one before this, and before three ago now, counting the new one. And then we went to Ireland, and he and I sang a duet on that show for PBS. And then we'd recorded his song, which is called Strangers Again, which is a great song. I told him
named your album after.
Yes, we did. I wanted to put some other people with that duo that we did. So I called up Jeff Bridges and Jackson Brown and Willie Nelson and some others, and they all said yes. But I wanted to say that I wanted to get a hold of Strangers Again before Taylor Swift or Diana Ross got it, because it is that good.
It is really that good. And I have spent the last couple of weeks since I knew that I was going to be seeing you here today, digging into both of your discographies. And Ari, you did something really wonderful where you actually released a song a week for a year. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that helped craft your, or I guess form your craft?
Yeah, I was an independent artist at first, and then I got signed to a big label in '03. And I made 2 albums with them, and neither one was particularly successful. And when I got out of the deal, I decided that the one thing I love to do so much that I don't get to do enough, or I didn't get to do enough as an artist on a big label, was to release lots of music and to write lots of music and put it out as I please. And so in 2008, I just decided I'm single. I don't have a whole lot of stuff going on this year. I don't have a ton of shows. I'm just going to go and write as much music as possible, a song a week, put it out, do the recording and the mixing in my apartment, even though I didn't really know how to do either one that well. And I just did this thing that, took all the time in my life away that year, but it was really enjoyable at the same time. And I really feel like I learned a lot writing those songs, and it's just a muscle that you work so often, you're going to get better at it. So I'm glad I did that. And then in the year after that, my fans chose their favorite 12 songs, and that became of the 52, and that became my album 12 Mondays.
I think that discipline is a through line in both of your careers. Judy, there's a beautiful passage in your autobiography, Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, where you talk about, first of all, being told that you had it in you to write songs. Was it Leonard Cohen?
It was Leonard Cohen. I didn't write things for the first 6 albums that I made. And in 1966, he came to see me with his songs, and I recorded them. And then he asked me why I wasn't writing my own songs. So I started then, and it's gone on and on. Actually, it's been very inspirational to meet and work with Ari, because although I've written songs all the way through, things like Since You've Asked and Secret Gardens and The Blizzard and so on, but when we met up and recorded the one that you were speaking of, Strangers Again, then we decided we'd like to record an album all together and write songs together, which I'd never done. Well, I wrote maybe, I don't know, one song with Jesse Valenzuela from the Gin Blossoms. We wrote one song together.
Oh, yeah?
That was it. That's my whole record throughout my whole. But this was, oh no, and then I wrote a couple songs with David and Buskin and Bateau. But we wrote a whole album over a year, and we've, of course, put out this one, Silver Skies Blue, which we're just crazy about. And then we, of course, sing these songs in concert, and that's thrilling. And we'll be doing them, of course, at the Carlyle.
I can't wait. I also think that my favorite line from the book, which I just poured through, it says, a good song has an element of mystery as well as mastery, and it sits still in your mind. And I've been thinking about that over and over as I listen to the songs on this record. And I think that discipline plays into that as well. You both have such an ability to capture the gravity and the depth of a moment, but also the brightness and lightness of life. And I don't really have a question that goes along with that. I just wanted to compliment you on your ability to do that.
Thank you.
Thanks. I think it's a tough thing to maintain mystery in your music these days and in your art, because you're asked to divulge a lot of information about it. You know, kind of right away. People want to know, you know, what did you write that song about? Well, I mean, the reality is, whatever we wrote it about isn't necessarily what you make of it, and we want you to make it, you know, whatever it is to you. And that's kind of a lost thing here at this stage. You know, you try to maintain some mystery, and it's difficult to. So, you know, whatever we wrote the songs about in the moment is not necessarily what everybody's going to take from it. And I like to think that my favorite artists, I don't really know necessarily what they were writing about. I just, you know, I love the music, and it means something to me that maybe is completely different than what they envisioned.
Also, the mystery and the magic, every time I hear songs that I love, I have a different experience. And we both do live music. We both are on the road a huge amount of time. And when I do a show, it'll never be the same again. It'll be that show that you see and that you hear, and that actually what's going on is that I'm taking my journey with the song, whatever it is, and you're taking your journey, and it's private, and you get to be alone with your own mind, with your own emotions, with your own journey. It is magical and mysterious every time either one of us or any artist does a live performance. I think that live music is a real service, and I think that people are given this so that we can stay on the planet. I mean, it's so hard otherwise, and I think we make a difference. Music in my life makes a difference. Listening to Ari makes a difference in my life. Listening to other great artists that I love. So it's something that we depend upon because it's actually doing something physically, emotionally, mentally to our lives. It's making those moments memorable, special, different.
I found myself in listening back to your back catalog, which 51 albums. This is your 51st album, which, Ari, if you think of those 52 songs you wrote in a year, think about a lifetime of 50 plus albums.
I'm just getting started.
Yeah, you are. I was just taken with the, I mean, it's sort of impossible to put into words, but because I was doing this research on an intellectual level to try to learn as much about you as I could, I had to hold myself back from really feeling everything my heart was straining to feel. So I was like, if I get lost in all of the tears I could cry over these songs, I would not be able to do the work that I needed to connect with you. But I have a stack of about 35 of those albums waiting for me at home. So as soon as we're gone, I'm going to dig into the emotion of the music. But of course, I've been familiar with it since I was a little girl. And I'm curious, Ari, to know whether you've been pumping her for stories about her days playing around this very neighborhood in the early folk scene.
It has come
60s.
up in conversation, and it's also come in interviews where other people want to know, you know, where exactly, you know, what was going on right in this time and when you were in this venue, which I know these venues as well, and my history with them too is, you know, fairly substantial. I like to think so until she starts talking. You know, it's a whole different
but
thing.
I'd love to hear where you've been, what you've done too. I mean, it's interesting because they're two different generations of making music, but there are a lot of similarities which we share. And I did start in 1961. I got here and performed nearby at Gertie's Folk City, and you know, it was an amazing time. Nobody had any money. Everybody wanted to make music. We went to each other's shows. We loved to hear what Dave Van Ronk was doing at the Gaslight, and hang out after the shows at Gertie's, and go to the Kettle of Fish and try to get sober in the morning. It was very exciting because many artists from all over the country were here, from Dylan and my opener, the night I opened at was the headliner at Gertie's Folk City, was a 13-year-old named Arlo. So, you know, it sort of went on from there.
Yeah, wow. What a time. But there's still so much beautiful live music going on in some of those same venues. I know the Bitter End was a place that you, where you played some of the earliest shows when it first opened, and you've played there as well, right?
It's also, the Bitter End is the first place I played with a band back in '98, I think. My first band was at the Bitter End in some sort of open mic situation. But yeah, that was my introduction to being on stage outside of my high school, where we had the Battle of the Bands, you know.
Which was here in New York, right?
Yeah, I grew up in the Bronx, and we, you know, I didn't really take music that seriously until the end of high school. I started this band and thinking, wait a minute, I kind of like this, and I'm maybe not as good at baseball as I thought I was, so I'm not going to do that professionally. Why don't I see where this goes? And that was that.
Wow. We're also sitting very close to the Public Theater, which I am known for my love of New York theater, and I was fascinated to learn that certainly everyone knows about your version of Send in the Clowns, which is a theatrical standard, won Song of the Year Grammy for Stephen Sondheim, and it's just such a gut-wrenching, beautiful classic. But I was surprised to learn that you actually acted in a Shakespeare in the Park production of Peer Gynt.
Yes, I did. It was 1969, and I had just split up with Stephen Stills, actually. And I suppose I needed to be in New York, first of all. And Joe Papp called me and said, would you like to be in a theatrical production of Peer Gynt? And I said, absolutely not. Mm-hmm. And then he called me and he said, listen, John Morris has written these songs. John Morris wrote a lot of songs for Mel Brooks. He wrote songs for Blazing Saddles and the 2,000-Year-Old Man, you know, but he wrote these gorgeous songs for Peer Gynt. So Joe Papp sent me the songs, and I listened, and I thought they were beautiful. And so I came down to the Public Theater for the first rehearsal with Stacy Keach playing Peer Gynt, and me playing the long-suffering Solveig, who needed nothing more than a 12-step program. I mean, she was pathetic, actually. And, you know, the long-suffering, you know, the role of the woman that we never want to see repeated in any of our lives. But it was exciting. It was marvelous. It was in Central Park for the whole summer of '69. And Olympia Dukakis was playing one of the parts, I can't remember, and Estelle Parsons was in the show. The witch, I forget her name. Anyway, it was wonderful, and I'll never forget it. It was very different than anything. I asked Stacy afterwards, I said, why did I never continue to do theater?
Well, I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, and he said,
it's not
well,
too late, by the way.
Yeah, he said, you had to make music, no matter what. And that's right. You know, there was always that pull to continue. I had the calling from the age of 4, I think, and had to
you
do
were
it.
a piano prodigy.
I was a piano prodigy, or yes, a piano progeny, as I sometimes say. Yes, I played seriously for many years, but I also had all the songs of Rodgers and Hart in my life because my father sang all of those. So, you know, My Funny Valentine was just as close as the Irish ballads. Mm-hmm. But I did jump ship when I was 15 and found folk music and found a guitar and found my life's work.
Has there ever been any thought about bringing some of your music to the Broadway stage. There's a Carole King musical, there's the Jersey Boys musical, there are all of these other legendary artists that have made theatrical works out of their shows or out of their music.
There's always a lot of talk, but there are, let's say, barriers, one of which is that I would never do 8 shows a week, although people don't really do 8 shows a week. Usually, even Lin-Manuel took Wednesdays and Saturdays off. And then his sub, who did the Wednesdays and Saturdays, got sick, so he had to do the Wednesdays and the Saturdays anyway to replace his replacement. And I couldn't do that. I couldn't risk the voice that many times. But there's a lot of talk. There are a lot of different ways one could do it. And so every once in a while it comes up. And I spent a few months and years actually working with a friend of mine who's a Broadway producer, who's actually, he produced Grease, and he produced Agnes of God, and he produced other things, and he's doing Josephine Baker's show now. And we talked for a couple of years about it. Probably it helped me to discover my own stories, which I now tell in many of my shows to go along with the music.
What's your favorite story to tell in a show?
Probably.
I like the Mormon one.
Oh, thank you. That's the best one. Yes, yes. Joan Baez and I have been friends for 50 or 55 years or something, and she sometimes wants me to sing the song of hers that goes, "How long since I spent the whole night in a twin bed with a stranger, with his warm arms all around me." And I always laugh when that song ends. And then I was online, and I didn't know this was your favorite story. And I was online, and I saw somebody misunderstood the lyrics, and they thought it said, "How long since I spent the whole night in a twin bed with a stranger with the Mormons all around me?" How do you like that story?
What is it about that story?
I don't know what it is about that. I mean, she has amazing stories. Obviously, there's such a wealth of information that she can give to the crowd, aside from the songs themselves. So it's a big part of her show, and it's interesting to watch how people are captivated just as much with what she's talking about. About whatever story it is, and most of them are really, really funny, and some of them are more just poignant than funny, but they're all really interesting to listen to, and it's a big part of her show, and it's been inspiring to me too. I'm trying to come up with more stories on my own. I need a Mormon story.
You do need a Mormon story. Well, you got to make them the way that I feel about it. I never, in the early days, I'd stand like a rock in front of the microphone with my eyes closed, playing that big 12-string guitar and saying nothing and never ever looking out into. And then I had a transformation, and now I realize you have to make them laugh, and if you're going to make them cry.
Well, you have a lot of stories that are not just about the fun times you had with the old legends in the folk scene. I admire very much your willingness to discuss openly a lot of the struggles that you faced, everything from suffering from polio as a child to tuberculosis to your struggle with alcoholism, the loss of your son. And as much as I love a good, funny story about the people that we've all grown up listening to, I think it's so valuable to hear from someone as legendary and as accomplished as you are about how hard it was to accomplish all that you have. So I'm honored to have the opportunity to thank you in person for that.
Well, I appreciate that you hear those things. Speaking of AOL, and speaking of social media, and speaking of Facebook and the other social media outlets that we have, I always wrote back to the people that wrote me fan mail, except, of course, Suzanne Vega wrote me a note, and I didn't answer her, and she'll never let me forget it. But other than that, I always did. And so now with social media, with the fact that I can get on and talk about, and I'll talk about depression, which I suffered from I don't know, very young age. and which I have found ways to deal with, which I talk about. But I got incredible. You can have a conversation with people about this. You know, what have they discovered? What have they done? And the same thing happens with the writing that I've done about the tough things, you know, the suicide of my son, which is never ceases to shock and disturb me. But because I've written about it, I get to do speaking engagements for fundraisers for suicide prevention and mental health, and then I get to talk to people afterwards. And I think it makes my life more authentic. It makes the contact with the people who are my audience more relevant. And it has the quality of bringing meaning to the things that have happened to me and taking them away from the terrible status that they achieve when they happen into something that's shared by other people. So I'm always grateful that I wanted first in my life to be a writer.
A storyteller. Yeah, that's beautiful. So thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to also just congratulate you on the fact that I was looking at the dates of when you found your sobriety, and I realized that it's exactly half of your life now.
It's
That you have
Yes,
now been sober
yes.
longer than you weren't.
Yes,
And that's
I'm
worth
sober
celebrating.
longer than I drank. Just about. It's almost immediately 38 and a half years, because I was just about to turn 39 when I caved in and said I give up, and was lucky because I was really intervened. I mean, whoever wants to stop drinking or doing things that are destructive? But I was dying, and eventually I began to notice. And I was lucky because I was intervened by a doctor in a white coat who was actually an intelligent, well-informed physician who saw the problem and said, I think I can help you. Or I think you can help yourself if you'll just let go.
And you had a new sort of rebirth, and you
Totally.
fell in love, and you've
Totally.
been with the man ever since, and all
Yes.
happily ever after from there.
Yes. It's been, well, that's when my life really started. The first half was all collecting the information, also being lucky enough to be able to be a working addict, to be a functioning addict. I mean, however much I might have done otherwise will never be known. But I did have that kind of drive. I was also a type A, so that I was a workaholic as well as an alcoholic, and that helped me. But since then, yes, I've fallen in love a couple of times, and always more and more and more with what I do. I mean, that's been a revelation to me.
Well, it's been so lovely to have you bring Ari into your canon, and the way your voices blend with Ari, your deep baritone, and
I love it.
And
It's
Judy,
just
you've got
terrific.
this ethereal thing going on, and they both contrast and blend in a way that I haven't really heard in duets before. And this album is just such a gift.
Thanks.
And I'm
Thank
excited that you're
you.
going to be performing live. We've got time for a couple of questions from the audience.
Great.
I feel like I could talk to you for 5 or 6 more hours, but I have to turn it over to them now.
Hi, I was wondering, in working together, what have you learned from one another?
Good question.
I think anytime you write with another songwriter, in my experience, there's a rub right away, kind of no matter what. There's something that happens right away. You're so used to writing songs by yourself that when you start working with somebody else and they have their way of doing things, you're immediately up against that barrier. But at that point, it's up to both of you to figure out how to work through those moments. And I think that it's not always the case that someone's willing to do that. When I met Judy and after I met Judy, when we finally started to write songs together, I was a little nervous that might not work out. I might have an idea that she's not gonna want to work with, it's possible. So she's been, very open to any kind of adjustments, and we kind of knew once we got in a room together that things were going to work out in a positive way with whatever we brought to each other, and we were very open about how we felt. We didn't want to do We didn't want to make something that's just not well thought out. And obviously she's someone who is very inspired to work very hard on things. She's done so many things, and she continues to look for new projects even right now. So I knew that I was working with somebody who's not going to get lazy, and I was inspired by her energy to really make these songs as great as possible.
Yes, I had no nerves about it because I knew it would be fine. I just had that feeling. I wouldn't have said yes. I wouldn't have agreed if I didn't know already that we had a place to start and we'd already sung together. So I knew that the voices. See, I never sang with anybody particularly throughout my career. Maybe a couple duets, but I never found a voice in another person that I knew I was meant to sing with this person rather than whoever else might have appeared. So there was that, but also I think it's more than the sum of its parts. It's different because we wrote together than it would be for myself writing alone or Ari on his own. So it creates something that is different, and I know for a fact that some of the ideas that I had came out of the fact that I was working with him rather than writing on my own. I mean, I'm now stumbling around trying to write on my own again, and it's very lonely.
I'm sure that there's no lack of songwriters who would love to jump into that spot if you're looking. We have time for one more.
Hi, thank you for being here. What's the significance of your album title, Silver Skies Blue?
Well, when I approached Judy about working together on a song, I had an idea for one particular song. I was actually thinking that I'm most of the way through a song that my voice doesn't work particularly well with, or at least I thought. And I thought, hey, Judy, would you like to sing this song? I just wanted to write this for you to sing. And her response was, well, I really like the song, but I would love to sing it with you. And at that point, that was sort of the light bulb moment where we said we should be writing together and we should be singing together duets, because we already knew that we sounded really great together. I didn't expect her to have that answer, but that was the beginning of everything. And that song was Silver Skies Blue. It was most of the way written, and then I came, and most of our writing sessions were here in her studio, where we kind of polished off everything. And that was one of the songs. That was the first song that we did together. So I think it has a little more meaning because it was the first one, and it happened to be called Silver Skies Blue.
It's a good title.
Well, the song is also about turning someone's silver skies blue, about when the skies look gray and you come out and just the presence of another person, the right person, can make those clouds part and see the sky. And I think what a perfect description of the partnership that you two have found on the record. And I think that's a perfect place to leave it. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you,
Judy
Laura.
and Ari, and congratulations on everything.
Thanks for the questions.